Marcus Williams was cutting across the lobby of an office building, racing to make it to an interview that could salvage his entire life, when he suddenly froze at the sound of a cry for help. Knowing that stopping would make him late, he still turned back toward the elevator, where a woman was trapped inside, her face pale, her breathing ragged, both hands clutching the doors in panic. Marcus immediately pressed up to the doors, knelt down to calm her, and patiently guided her step by step until she could get out safely. That split-second decision sent him crashing to the very bottom of his life, and unknowingly set in motion the event that would change everything. 5 years ago, Marcus Williams had been at the top of his game, graduated top of his class from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in electrical and systems engineering, got recruited straight out of school by Keystone Infrastructure Solutions, one of Philadelphia's most respected firms. Within 2 years he had been promoted to lead systems engineer, overseeing projects that redesigned how entire city blocks received and distributed power. His work was not just good, it was exceptional. The kind of work that made other engineers stop and study what he had done. He met Diane at a company event, a charity gala that Keystone hosted every December. She worked in the marketing department of a real estate firm downtown, and when she smiled at him across the ballroom floor, everything else in the room just disappeared. She was beautiful, sure, but it was more than that. She looked at him like he mattered, like he was somebody worth knowing, worth admiring. They got married 14 months later. Small ceremony, nothing extravagant. Diane had worn a simple white dress and Marcus had cried when he saw her walking toward him, which he would never admit to anyone except God. She had whispered in his ear during their first dance that she could not wait to build a life with him. And Marcus had believed every single word. For a while they did build that life. A nice apartment in Center City, weekend dinners at restaurants they used to drive past and dream about. Vacations they actually took instead of just talked about. Marcus was providing. Diane was happy, everything was working exactly the way it was supposed to. But looking back now, Marcus could see things he had been too in love to notice at the time. The way Diane's mood always tracked their bank account, how her warmth toward him seemed to rise and fall with his professional success. She loved him, yes, but she loved what he represented too: stability, status, a certain kind of life. And Marcus, blinded by how good it all felt, never stopped to ask what would happen if those things went away. Then the bottom fell out. It happened fast, the way disasters always do. One day, everything at Keystone was fine. The next, federal investigators were walking through the offices with badges and clipboards, and the evening news was running stories about massive fraud at the executive level. Embezzlement, falsified contracts. Millions of dollars siphoned off into offshore accounts by the very people who had shaken Marcus's hand and called him the future. Marcus had nothing to do with any of it. He was just an engineer. He kept his head down. He did his work. He designed systems that actually worked. Systems that actually helped people. But when Keystone collapsed, it took everyone with it. The severance package was a joke. 2 months of pay and a half-hearted letter of recommendation from a vice president who had already secured himself a cushy position at a competitor before the ink on the investigation was dry. Marcus tried to stay positive. He was talented. He was experienced. Someone would hire him. The infrastructure sector was always looking for good engineers, except they were not looking for him. Turns out, when a company goes down in a blaze of scandal, everyone associated with it gets burned. It did not matter that Marcus's name never appeared in a single investigative report. It did not matter that his work had been spotless. He was tainted by association, and in a competitive job market, that was more than enough to keep every door locked shut. The rejections started out polite: "We have decided to go in a different direction. Your qualifications are impressive, but we have found a candidate who better fits our current needs. We will keep your resume on file." Then the rejections stopped being polite. They just stopped coming altogether. Silence. Nothing. Like Marcus Williams had ceased to exist. 8 months of silence. 8 months of walking into lobbies and handing his resume to people who would never read it. 8 months of coming home to Diane and watching her face harden a little more each time he shook his head. They sold his car first, that had hurt more than Marcus expected, watching the buyer drive away in the sedan that used to take him to work every morning. Diane had not cried. She had stood at the window with her arms crossed and said, "Well, at least that buys us another month." No embrace, No reassurance, just math. Then they sold her jewelry, that one she cried over, but not the way a woman cries with her husband. She cried the way someone cries when they are watching their life burn and blaming the person holding the match. Then the furniture. Then the apartment in Center City, traded for a cramped studio on the outskirts of Kensington, where the rent was cheap because nothing worked right and the neighbors kept hours that made sleep a luxury. With each sacrifice, Diane did not just grow harder, she grew colder, more precise in her cruelty. The woman who used to kiss him goodbye every morning now barely looked at him before he left. She stopped asking how his job search was going because, as she told him one night with a flatness that chilled his blood, "I already know the answer, Marcus. The answer is always the same, nothing." She started keeping a mental ledger of everything they had lost, and she recited it like a prosecutor presenting evidence. The apartment, the car, the dinners, the vacations. Her friendships, which she said had dried up because she was too embarrassed to see anyone. Her hair appointments, her gym membership. Everything they used to have, reduced to a list of grievances with Marcus's name at the top of every one. "Do you know what my sister said to me last week?" Diane asked him one evening, her voice like a wire pulled tight. "She said she felt sorry for me." "Sorry, Marcus. My little sister feels sorry for me because of you." "I am trying, Diane. I am doing everything I can." "Well, your everything has not been enough for 8 months. At what point do you admit that maybe you are the problem?" Marcus did not answer. He did not have one. The phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. Marcus had been awake for over an hour already, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to Diane breathe beside him. They did not talk much anymore, not in bed, not at meals, not at all really. The silence between them had become its own living thing, heavy and suffocating, taking up all the space their words used to fill. Marcus grabbed the phone quickly, not wanting to wake Diane. The number was unfamiliar. His heart jumped the way it always did when he saw an unknown number, because unknown meant possibility. Unknown meant someone might actually want to talk to him about a job instead of sending another automated rejection. He slipped into the hallway and answered, "Hello. Is this Marcus Williams?" The voice was female, professional, efficient. "Yes, this is Marcus, Mr. Williams. This is Rebecca Stanton from Atlantic Metro Engineering. We received your application for the senior systems engineer position. We would like to bring you in for an interview. Would you be available this morning at 8? Marcus's breath caught. Atlantic Metro Engineering. He had sent them his resume 3 weeks ago and heard nothing. He had assumed it went into the same black hole as every other application. "Yes," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. 8 would be perfect. I will be there." "Excellent. Ask for me at the front desk when you arrive. We will see you then, Mr. Williams." The call ended. Marcus stood in the hallway, phone pressed against his chest, barely breathing. Atlantic Metro Engineering. One of the biggest firms in the region. They wanted to see him. Today, in less than 90 minutes. He rushed back into the bedroom. Diane was awake now, sitting up in bed, her hair tangled, her eyes puffy and suspicious. Who was that? "Atlantic Metro Engineering," Marcus said, and for the first time in months he let himself sound excited. "They want to interview me. This morning at 8. Diane blinked. "Atlantic Metro, they are a real company." "I know, this could change everything, Diane." She looked at the clock. "It is 6:32, how are you getting downtown by 8? "Subway." "I will make it. I have it planned." Diane lay back down and pulled the covers over her shoulder, turning away from him. "Sure, good luck with that." Then without looking at him, she added, "Try not to mess this one up." Her words followed Marcus out the door like a cold wind. He dressed quickly, choosing his best shirt, the one he kept pressed and hanging in the back of the closet specifically for moments like this. The collar was starting to fray, but it was still presentable, professional. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and tried to see what an employer would see. Reliable, experienced, confident, not desperate, never desperate. "You can do this," he told his reflection. "You have earned this." Diane was still in bed when he left, her back turned to the door. Marcus wanted to kiss her goodbye, to feel some kind of connection to the woman he had married, but he knew she would not welcome it. She had not welcomed it in a long time. So he just closed the door quietly behind him and headed out into the Philadelphia morning, carrying everything he had left inside a manila folder pressed against his heart. The subway platform was crowded. Marcus checked his phone. 6:52. He had 68 minutes. The blue line would take him to City Hall Station in about 35 minutes, then a quick transfer to the Broad Street line, and then a 12-minute walk to Atlantic Metro's building on Market Street. Tight, but manageable. He had built in a cushion. He had planned for this. The train arrived on time. Marcus boarded, pressed himself into a corner near the door, his folder clutched against his chest. His heart was hammering, but he focused on breathing. Slow and steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way his mother had taught him when he was a boy, and nervous about something. His mother, Lord, what would she think if she could see him now? Margaret Williams had raised 3 boys by herself in North Philadelphia after their father left. She had worked 2 jobs, cleaned office buildings at night and answered phones at a doctor's office during the day, and she had never once complained. Not once. She used to tell Marcus, "You got a good heart, baby. Do not ever let this world take that from you. Your heart is the best thing about you." She had died 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer, quick and merciless. Marcus had held her hand at the end, and she had looked up at him with those tired, beautiful eyes and said, "Promise me you will always be kind, baby. No matter what, promise me." He had promised, and he had kept that promise, even when it cost him, especially when it cost him. The train moved smoothly for 20 minutes. Marcus watched the stations flash past, counting them down like a man counting his own heartbeats. 15 minutes to City Hall, then the transfer, then the walk. He was going to make it, then the train stopped, not at a station, just stopped. In the tunnel, the lights flickered once, twice, and then steadied. The car was silent for a moment, that eerie suspended silence that happens when a subway train goes still underground and everyone holds their breath. Then the announcement came over the intercom, scratchy and distorted. "Attention passengers, we are experiencing a service disruption due to a signal malfunction ahead. We will be moving again as soon as possible. We apologize for the inconvenience." Marcus felt his stomach drop straight through the floor. He checked his phone. 7:14. He had 46 minutes. It was fine. Signal problems usually cleared up in a few minutes. 5, maybe 10. He had built in a cushion. He had planned for this. 10 minutes passed. The train did not move. 7:24. 36 minutes. 15 minutes passed. Still nothing. Around him other passengers were getting restless, checking phones, sighing, shifting in their seats. One man near the back of the car started arguing loudly with nobody in particular about how the transit authority could not run a railroad if their lives depended on it. 7:29. 31 minutes. Marcus stood up and moved to the intercom panel near the door. He pressed the button. "Excuse me, is there any estimate on when we will be moving?" The driver's voice came back, bored and unhelpful. "Could be 5 minutes, could be an hour. Signal crew is working on it. Nothing I can do." An hour. Marcus looked at his phone again. 7:31. If he stayed on this train, he might make it, or he might not. The uncertainty was unbearable, like being buried alive in maybe. Is there a station close enough to walk to? Spring Garden is about a quarter-mile back. Emergency exit is at the front of the train. But I would not recommend it. The tunnel is not designed for pedestrian traffic. Marcus did not care about recommendations. He cared about the fact that he was trapped underground with 29 minutes left to get to the most important appointment of his life. Leaving the tunnel on foot would put him at Spring Garden Station. From there he could get above ground and either catch a bus or walk. Atlantic Metro's building was roughly 2 miles from Spring Garden. If he ran, if he pushed himself harder than he had ever pushed, he might just barely make it. Or he could stay on the train and pray. Marcus had done a lot of praying over the past 8 months. He loved God, but he was starting to wonder if God was listening. He made his decision. When the driver opened the emergency access door at the front of the first car, Marcus was the first one through. He walked the quarter-mile through the dimly lit tunnel, his dress shoes crunching on gravel, his folder held tight against his chest, and climbed the emergency stairs to street level at Spring Garden. The morning sun hit him like an open hand. It was already brutal, that thick Philadelphia heat that turns the city into a brick oven by mid-morning. Marcus checked his phone. 7:28, 32 minutes, 2 miles. He started running. Marcus's lungs were burning within 5 blocks, his dress shoes were not made for running, and he could feel blisters forming on both heels with every stride. Sweat poured down his face, soaked through his shirt, dripped onto the folder he still clutched against his body like a shield. People on the sidewalk stared at him. He knew what he looked like. A black man in business clothes, drenched in sweat, sprinting down Spring Garden Street at 7:40 in the morning. He knew what some of them were thinking, but he did not care. He could not afford to care about anything except getting to Market Street by 8 o'clock. He cut south on Broad, dodging around commuters, jumping a puddle from a leaking fire hydrant, nearly colliding with a woman pushing a stroller. His vision was starting to blur at the edges from the heat and the exertion, but he kept his legs moving, kept pushing forward, kept telling himself that he could make it, that he would make it, that God had not brought him this far to let him fail. 7:44, 16 minutes. He turned onto a side street, hoping for a shortcut. This part of the city was quieter, a stretch of older commercial buildings mixed with small offices and parking garages. The sidewalk was mostly empty. Good. Fewer people to dodge. Halfway down the block, Marcus spotted an older office building with glass doors on both ends, the kind people used as a pass-through during the day. He had seen it before. If he cut through the lobby he could shave off a few precious minutes. Marcus veered toward the entrance and pushed through the glass doors. The lobby was nearly empty, lit by tired fluorescent lights that hummed softly overhead. His footsteps echoed against the tile as he jogged across the floor, heart pounding, lungs burning. And then he heard it. A sharp metallic knock, once, twice, followed by a voice, female, tight with fear. "Hello, is anyone there? Please, I need help." Marcus slowed. The sound was coming from the elevator bank to his right. One of the elevator doors was cracked open just a few inches. Through the narrow gap, he caught a glimpse of movement, a face pressed close to the opening. A woman's eyes, wide and white with terror, locked onto his. "Please," she called out again, louder now, her voice breaking. "I'm stuck in here. Please help me." Marcus stopped completely. His phone buzzed in his hand as he checked the time. 7:45. 15 minutes until his interview. The building where Atlantic Metro was located was still more than a mile away. He stood there in the middle of the lobby, frozen between two futures. If he kept running, he might make it. Might. There were no guarantees, but stopping now, right now, to help a stranger stuck in an elevator, that was a guarantee. A guarantee of being late. A guarantee of losing the only real chance he had left. The woman saw him through the glass doors of the lobby. Her eyes locked onto his, and Marcus saw something in them that he recognized because he had felt it himself 100 times over the past 8 months. Raw, unfiltered terror. The kind of fear that eats your mind from the inside out, not the kind of fear you feel when you are inconvenienced. The kind you feel when you think you might actually die. "Please," she called out, her voice cracking and breaking apart. "I am claustrophobic. I cannot breathe in here. The walls are closing in. I have been screaming for 10 minutes and nobody came. Please, please, you are the only person I have seen. Please do not leave me." Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about Diane. About her cold voice that morning. Try not to mess this one up. About the apartment they were going to lose. About the divorce that was coming, whether he admitted it or not. Then he thought about his mother. About what she would say if she knew her son had walked past a terrified woman trapped in an elevator because he had somewhere more important to be. "Promise me you will always be kind, baby. No matter what. Promise me." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at his phone one last time. 7:46. 14 minutes. A little over a mile. Then he stepped away from the exit and back toward the elevator. "Hey," he said, moving toward the elevator, keeping his voice calm and steady, even though his own heart was a riot. "I am right here. My name is Marcus. I am not going anywhere." "What is your name?" "Kate," the woman gasped. Her fingers were gripping the edge of the cracked door so hard her knuckles had gone white. Kate Harrington. Oh, thank God. I thought nobody was coming. I thought I was going to be in here forever and nobody was going to find me. That is not going to happen, Marcus said. He was already examining the elevator doors, his engineering brain automatically shifting into problem-solving mode. The doors were jammed. The elevator car was stuck between the first and second floors, about 3 feet above the lobby level. Through the gap, he could see Kate's face at roughly his chest height. She was a white woman, maybe early 30s, with light brown hair pulled back in a plain clip. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed money or status. She looked like any office worker heading to any ordinary day at any ordinary job. Except her face was the color of chalk, and tears were streaming down her cheeks, and her breathing was coming in short, shallow gasps that Marcus recognized immediately as the early warning signs of a full-blown panic attack. Kate, listen to me, Marcus said, getting down on one knee so he was eye level with her through the gap. I need you to breathe with me, okay? I know it feels like the walls are getting smaller. They are not. I promise you. It is just your mind playing tricks because it is scared. You are safe. I am right here. I am not leaving. Look at my eyes, Kate. Just look at my eyes and breathe with me. She locked her gaze onto his. Brown eyes meeting blue, and in that moment, a connection formed between two strangers that neither of them could explain. Marcus breathed slowly, deliberately, and after a few seconds, Kate began to match his rhythm. In through the nose. Hold it, out through the mouth. Good, Marcus said. That is perfect, you are doing great. Now I am going to get you out of here, but I need your help. Can you tell me if there is an access panel inside the elevator? Probably on the wall near the buttons. It might have a small keyhole or a screwdriver slot. Kate looked around, her breathing still shaky but slowing. There is something, a small metal panel near the bottom. It says electrical access. Perfect, can you open it? It might just pop off with a little pressure. He heard her fumbling, then a metallic click. It is open, there are wires and some kind of circuit box. Marcus nodded. This was an older building, probably still running the original elevator system from the 80s or 90s. He had worked on building systems like this at Keystone, not elevators specifically, but electrical control systems. Power distribution, relay switches, safety interlocks. The principles were identical. It was all engineering. He talked Kate through what she was seeing, asking her to describe the wiring, the position of the relay switches, the status of the indicator lights on the circuit board. From what she described, it sounded like the main door interlock relay had tripped, meaning the safety system believed the doors were open and had cut power to the motor. A common failure in older elevators with worn sensor contacts. Simple fix if you knew what you were looking for. Kate, I need you to find a small switch inside that box. It should be red or orange, near the bottom. That is the manual override for the door interlock safety. I see it. It is red. Flip it up. Then press and hold the door close button on the main panel for a count of 5. He heard the click of the switch, a pause, and then the grinding hum of the elevator motor engaging. The car shifted, dropped about 6 inches with a jolt that made Kate cry out, and then the doors began to slide open with a horrible screech of metal grinding on metal. Kate practically fell out of the elevator into the lobby. Marcus caught her. She was trembling so hard he could feel it through his whole body, like holding a bird that had just escaped a cage. She clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, sobbing. Thank you, she said between gasps. Oh my God, thank you. I know it sounds dramatic, but I truly thought I was going to die in there. I could not breathe. The walls were. It does not sound dramatic, Marcus said gently. Claustrophobia is real. What you went through was terrifying, but you are out now. You are safe, you are okay. She pulled back and looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. She saw his soaked dress shirt, his heaving chest, his blistered, bleeding feet in those worn-out shoes. The manila folder still somehow clutched in his left hand. You were running somewhere, she said. You were in a hurry. I could hear your footsteps from inside the elevator and I screamed and you stopped. Where were you going? Marcus looked at his phone. 7:48. The interview had started 4 minutes ago. Without him, nowhere important, he said quietly. It does not matter now. It does matter, Kate said, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that surprised him. You stopped for me. You were clearly running somewhere urgent and you stopped. That matters. Are you going to be okay? Marcus asked, stepping back. Is there someone I can call for you? Please, let me at least get your phone number, or your last name. I want to thank you properly, please. But Marcus was already moving toward the glass doors. He could feel the grief rising in his chest, the full crushing weight of what had just happened, and he needed to get away before it broke through. Take care of yourself, Kate, he said over his shoulder. Stay out of elevators for a while. He pushed through the doors and back onto the sidewalk and walked away as fast as his ruined feet would carry him. Behind him through the glass, Kate Harrington stood in the empty lobby, watching him disappear, her heart still racing but no longer from fear. Such a kind man, she whispered to nobody. I hope whatever he was running to, I did not cost him too much. She had no idea how much it would cost. Marcus stood in the lobby of Atlantic Metro Engineering at 8:18. 18 minutes late, he had run the remaining distance on feet that felt like they were being stabbed with every step. The building was everything he expected. Glass and steel and polished marble, the kind of place where successful people worked. The kind of place he used to belong. He approached the reception desk. The woman behind it was in her 50s, immaculate, with reading glasses perched on her nose and nails that clicked against her keyboard like small precise judgments. Can I help you? Her smile was professional, and it cooled the instant she took in his appearance. I have an interview, Marcus said, fighting to keep his voice steady. With Rebecca Stanton. My name is Marcus Williams. Click 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 went the nails. The receptionist looked at her screen. Your interview was scheduled for 8 o'clock, Mr. Williams. It is now 8:18. I know, I am sorry. The subway broke down and I had to walk, and on the way someone needed help, and Mr. Williams. The receptionist cut him off with a voice that could have sliced metal. Your interview was at 8, you are 18 minutes late. Atlantic Metro Engineering is a professional organization. We expect professionalism from our candidates. Arriving nearly half an hour late demonstrates a complete lack of respect for our time and, frankly, a fundamental inability to manage your own. I understand that, but the circumstances were beyond my. Everyone faces circumstances, Mr. Williams. Successful professionals plan for them. They leave early. They prepare. They do not arrive late with stories and expect accommodation. Please, Marcus said. He hated how that word came out. Small, broken, a man begging. Is there any way I could still meet with Miss Stanton? If she could just look at my resume, my qualifications, I know I can do this job. The receptionist looked at him for a long moment, and in her eyes Marcus saw something he had become very familiar with. The look of someone who had already decided who he was and what he was worth, and the number was 0. Miss Stanton's schedule is full. We will not be rescheduling. I would suggest, Mr. Williams, that in the future you take your opportunities more seriously. Goodbye. Marcus stood there for 5 more seconds. Then he turned and walked back toward the revolving door, his shoes squeaking against the marble, his folder pressed to his chest like a man carrying flowers to his own funeral. He pushed through the door and into the heat. The sun was blinding. Marcus walked to the side of the building and leaned against the wall. His legs gave out and he slid down until he was sitting on the concrete, his head in his hands. God, he whispered. I was just trying to help somebody. I was just trying to be a decent human being. Why does being decent have to cost this much? The city did not answer. His phone buzzed. A text from Diane. How did it go? Marcus stared at the words until they blurred. Then he put the phone in his pocket and closed his eyes and sat there on the concrete, with his whole world in pieces around him, and let the sun burn down on him like an accusation. He walked for hours before going home. He could not face Diane. Not yet. Not while the words were still fresh, the receptionist's dismissal still ringing in his ears, the weight of what he had lost still pressing down on his chest like a boot. When he finally pushed open the apartment door at nearly 7 in the evening, Diane was sitting on the couch in the dark. Not watching television. Not reading, just sitting there with her arms crossed, waiting, the way a judge waits for a defendant to enter the courtroom. Where have you been? Quiet, flat, dangerous. Walking, for 12 hours, while I sat here calling you over and over. My phone died. Your phone died. Of course it did. She stood up. How was the interview, Marcus? He set his folder on the table. He could not look at her. I did not get it. What does that mean? Did they say they would call back? I did not make the interview. I was late. They would not see me. Silence. A long, terrible silence during which Marcus could actually feel the temperature in the room change. You were late. Diane's voice was barely above a whisper, which was worse, so much worse than screaming. You were late to the only real interview you have had in 8 months. The one thing that could have saved us. The subway broke down. I had to climb out and run. And on the way there was a woman trapped in an elevator. She was having a panic attack. She was alone, and terrified, and screaming for help. Diane. I could not just. You stopped. Diane's voice rose like a wave building before it crashes. You stopped to help some stranger stuck in an elevator. She was panicking. She could not breathe. I do not care. The words came out sharp and absolute. I do not care if she was having a heart attack. I do not care if the building was on fire. You were on your way to the most important meeting of our lives, and you stopped to play hero for someone you have never met and will never see again. I could not leave her there. Yes, you could have. You call 911, you yell for security, you do literally anything except sacrifice your own future, our future, for a complete stranger. But that is not what you did, is it? Because you are Marcus Williams. Saint Marcus. Too good, too noble, too stupid to save himself. That word, stupid. It landed like a slap. My kindness is not stupidity, Marcus said, and his voice broke when he said it. Then what is it? Diane stepped closer, her eyes hard, her voice razor thin. Because from where I am standing, it looks exactly like stupidity. It looks like a man who does not know how the world works. The world does not care about your good heart, Marcus. The world does not give you a medal for being nice. All the world cares about is results, and you have none. 0. 8 months of nothing. I helped someone today. And it cost us everything. Diane's voice went cold, surgical. The voice of a woman who had already packed her bags emotionally and was just waiting for the right moment to pick them up physically. You know what the difference is between you and successful people, Marcus. Successful people are smart enough to know that you take care of your own first. You put food on your own table before you feed strangers. You save your own life before you jump in the water after someone else. That is not selfish. That is survival. And you do not understand it. You have never understood it. My mother raised me to your mother raised you to be poor. The words came out like a blade. Diane's face did not flinch. Your mother cleaned office buildings her whole life and died with nothing. And now you are out here following in her footsteps, choosing kindness over common sense, just like she did. And where has it gotten you? Where has it gotten us? Marcus felt something inside him shatter, not crack, shatter, like a window hit by a stone. Do not talk about my mother. Why not? Because the truth hurts. Your mother was a sweet woman, Marcus. She was kind and good, and she worked herself to death, and she had nothing to show for it. Nothing. And you are becoming her. You are becoming a kind, good man, with absolutely nothing. Marcus could not speak. His throat was closed. His eyes were burning, but he would not cry. Not in front of her. Not now. Diane walked past him to the bedroom. He heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding. When she came back she was carrying a bag, already half packed, and Marcus understood with a sickening clarity that she had packed it before he came home. She had made this decision hours ago, maybe days ago, maybe weeks. She had just been waiting for the right excuse. I am going to my sister's, she said. Her voice was calm now, final, a door closing and locking behind her. I am done, Marcus. I am done watching you throw away every chance we have because you would rather be good than be smart. Diane, please, do not do this. She stopped at the door. She turned and looked at him, And for just 1 second, one tiny flicker, Marcus saw something that might have been sorrow. Then it was gone, replaced by the hard mask she had been wearing for months. "You want to know the worst part," she said. "I actually loved who you used to be. The engineer. The man with the plan. The man who was going places. That man. I would have followed anywhere. But you are not him anymore. You are just a soft-hearted fool who thinks the universe owes him something for being nice." She shook her head. "The universe does not owe you anything, Marcus. And neither do I." The door closed behind her. Marcus stood in the middle of their empty apartment and felt the silence rush in like floodwater, filling every corner, every crack, every space where her voice used to be. He did not move for a long time. He just stood there, holding his manila folder, surrounded by the cheap furniture of their cheap apartment in the cheap part of town, and tried to remember what it felt like to be the man Diane used to love. The man she said he was not anymore. 2 weeks later, the envelope came. A wedding ring and divorce papers with a sticky note that read, "Sign these. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Marcus signed them that night at the kitchen table with a pen that was running out of ink, and he had to write his name twice because the first time it was so shaky it did not look like his signature. Then he sat in the dark and let himself break apart. The night janitor position at Mercer Tower paid $12.75 an hour. No benefits, no guarantees. The shift ran from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. 8 hours of mopping floors, emptying trash cans, scrubbing bathrooms, and vacuuming carpets in a 32-story office building downtown. The building manager who hired him was a heavy-set man named Carl who looked at Marcus's resume with the expression of a man reading a foreign language. "You have an engineering degree from Penn." "Yes, sir. And you are applying to mop floors." "I need a job. Any job. I will do whatever you have." Carl studied him for a long moment, the way you study a puzzle you did not expect to encounter on a Tuesday morning. "Look, I am not going to pretend this is not beneath you. It is. But if you want the work, it is yours. Show up on time, do the job right, do not steal anything, and we will get along fine." "Thank you," Marcus said. "I will not let you down." "Son, you are not letting me down. You are letting yourself down. But that is between you and the man in the mirror." And so Marcus Williams, summa cum laude graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, former lead systems engineer at Keystone Infrastructure Solutions, the man whose designs had saved a company tens of millions of dollars, became a night janitor. The work was exactly what you would imagine: mindless, repetitive, invisible. The kind of labor that gives your hands something to do while your mind goes to war with itself. Marcus pushed his mop down endless hallways at 2 in the morning, past offices where important people did important work during the day. People who would never see him, never know his name, never guess that the man emptying their trash cans at night could redesign their entire building's power grid in an afternoon. He tried not to think about Diane, about her last words, "a soft-hearted fool. Stupid. Your mother raised you to be poor." He tried not to think about Kate Harrington and her terrified eyes through the elevator door and the choice he had made and the price he had paid. He tried not to wonder whether his mother really had been wrong, whether a good heart was not a gift but a curse, a weight that dragged you down while everyone else climbed over you. But the thoughts came anyway, relentless as the dirty floors that needed cleaning night after night after night. The other janitors were decent people. There was Harold, a 63-year-old Vietnam veteran who had been cleaning buildings for 20 years and knew every security guard and late working accountant in the tower by name. There was Rosa, a single mother of 4 who worked the night shift so she could be home when her kids woke up for school. There was Darnell, a 20-year-old kid putting himself through community college one course at a time, working nights to pay tuition. They accepted Marcus without judgment. Harold shared his thermos of coffee during breaks and told stories about his time in the service that were equal parts horrifying and hilarious. Rosa brought extra food every night because she could tell Marcus was not eating enough, and she would slide a container across the break room table and say, "I made too much again," even though they both knew she had not. Darnell asked Marcus about engineering and listened with genuine wonder when Marcus explained how electrical grid systems powered an entire city. "Man," Darnell said one night, shaking his head slowly, "you are way too smart to be pushing a mop." Smart does not pay the bills, Darnell. Maybe not right now, but guys like you do not stay down here forever. I can feel it. Marcus was not sure Darnell was right about that, but it was the kindest thing anyone had said to him in months, and he held on to it the way a drowning man holds on to driftwood. The weeks turned into months. Marcus settled into the routine. Sleep during the day in his tiny studio apartment with its water-stained ceiling and its broken heater. Work all night. Eat when he could afford to. Try not to drown in the silence of a life that had been stripped down to nothing but survival. He kept his engineering certifications current. During breaks he studied in the Mercer Tower basement, reading technical journals he found in the recycling bins of the offices he cleaned. Dog-eared copies of Infrastructure Today and Smart Grid Quarterly and Power Systems Engineering, tossed out by people who had no idea that the man who emptied their waste baskets would have given anything to do the work those journals described. He did not know why he kept studying. Nobody was going to hire him. But it felt like a small act of defiance, a refusal to surrender the last piece of himself that still meant something. One night, about 4 months into the job, Marcus was cleaning the 14th floor. It was 2:30 in the morning. The building was empty except for the cleaning crew and the security guards downstairs. He was vacuuming the conference room of some management consulting firm, a room with a mahogany table that seated 20 and windows that looked out over the Philadelphia skyline like a postcard from someone else's life. He paused, leaning on the vacuum handle, and stared out at the city. All those lights, all those buildings, all those systems humming along in the dark, carrying power and data and heat and life to millions of people who never thought about where any of it came from. Marcus had thought about it. Marcus had spent his entire career thinking about it. "You still here, Thompson?" Harold appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. 14th floor was supposed to be done an hour ago. "Sorry, got lost in my head." Harold walked over and stood beside him at the window. For a minute they just looked at the city together. Then Harold said, "I have been cleaning buildings since you were in diapers. Seen a lot of men come through this work. Most of them belong here. Not because they are bad people, just because life put them here, and here is where they are going to stay. But every once in a great while, someone comes through who is just passing through. Someone who is at the bottom of a story that is not over yet." He looked at Marcus with those old steady eyes. "That is you, son. I do not know when your chapter turns, but it is going to turn. I can feel it in my bones." "I hope you are right, Harold. I am always right. You can ask Rosa if you do not believe me." Marcus laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but it was real. Harold clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on. These trash cans are not going to empty themselves." It was a Thursday night, about 5 months into the job. Marcus was cleaning the 26th floor, which belonged to a large financial advisory firm that occupied 3 full floors of the tower. The 26th was the executive level, and Marcus always saved it for last because the offices up here were quieter. The carpet was softer under his worn-out shoes, and the floor-to-ceiling windows made the night sky feel close enough to touch. He was emptying a trash can in one of the corner offices when he heard voices in the hallway. Unusual for this hour. The building was supposed to be empty above the 15th floor after midnight. Marcus stepped into the hall with his trash bag and nearly walked straight into 2 people coming briskly from the direction of the conference room. One was a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit, carrying a leather portfolio. The other was a woman. Business attire. Light brown hair pulled back, her face drawn tight with the kind of exhaustion that comes from a day that started too early and ran too long. Marcus stepped aside to let them pass. "Excuse me," he said quietly. The way he always did when he encountered people who actually belonged in a building like this. Polite, unobtrusive, invisible, just the janitor. Nothing to see. The woman glanced at him as she passed. A reflexive glance, the kind you give a piece of furniture you have to step around. Then she stopped, dead stopped, like she had hit a wall that nobody else could see. Marcus, the man kept walking a few steps before he realized she was no longer beside him. "Kate, what is it?" But Kate Harrington was not listening. She was staring at Marcus Williams with an expression that traveled through shock and recognition and disbelief and arrived, finally, at something that looked like a wound opening. "Marcus," she said again, softer, like she was testing whether the word was real. "The elevator, that morning. You got me out. You talked me through it. You told me to breathe with you." Marcus stood in the hallway of the 26th floor of Mercer Tower, holding a bag of other people's garbage in one hand and a spray bottle of industrial cleaning solution in the other. He was wearing blue coveralls with his name stitched in white thread on the chest. His shoes were scuffed, his hands were rough. He smelled like floor wax and ammonia. And standing 5 feet away from him was a woman in a suit that cost more than he made in a month, looking at him like she was seeing a ghost. He remembered her immediately. Of course he did. She was woven into the worst day of his life. "Kate," he said. "Yeah, I remember. What are you doing here?" Her voice was barely holding steady. Her eyes were moving over his coveralls, his cleaning cart down the hall, the trash bag in his hand. "Reading the story that his uniform told." "Working," Marcus said simply. "Night shift." The man, the one in the expensive suit, looked between them with obvious confusion. "Kate, what is going on? Who is this?" But Kate did not answer him. She was looking at Marcus the way you look at something precious that has been shattered and scattered across the floor, and you cannot believe no one stopped to pick up the pieces. "But you are an engineer," she said, and her voice cracked on the word. "You fixed that elevator in minutes. 2 minutes. You knew exactly what was wrong. You talked me through one of the worst panic attacks of my entire life like it was nothing. Like it was easy, and now you are—" She could not finish the sentence. She gestured helplessly at the hallway, the cleaning cart, the uniform, the entirety of his fallen life. "It is honest work," Marcus said. "Can we talk?" Kate asked. "Please, somewhere private. This is important. Please, Marcus." Marcus glanced at his cart, at the floors he still had to finish, at the clock on the wall that said 1:47 in the morning. "I am on the clock. I have 3 more floors. I will call building management myself. Right now, I will make sure your pay is not affected. Please." Something in her eyes, something fierce and desperate and determined. Marcus recognized it. It was the same look she had through the elevator door, except this time she was not the one who needed saving. "Okay," he said. "Break room on 18. They sat in the employee break room, that windowless fluorescent lit room with its stained microwave and its coffee maker that was older than Darnell. Kate sat across from Marcus. The man who she introduced as David Calloway stood by the door. "Tell me," Kate said. "Everything. What happened after that morning? After you helped me. All of it." And Marcus told her, not because he wanted sympathy, not because he was looking for pity, but because she was part of this story whether she knew it or not, and she had asked, and Marcus Williams had never been good at lying. He told her about arriving late at Atlantic Metro, the receptionist who shut him down without blinking, about going home to Diane and the fight that followed, the words that cut so deep they left scars he could still feel. "Your mother raised you to be poor, a soft-hearted fool," about the divorce papers that arrived 2 weeks later. About 8 months of searching for engineering work and finding nothing but rejection and silence. About ending up here in blue coveralls, emptying trash cans and mopping floors for $12.75 an hour while the city slept above him. He told it simply, without self-pity, without drama. Just the facts of how one act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that dismantled his entire life. When he finished, the break room was quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Kate was crying. Not loudly, just tears running down her face in steady streams, her hands clasped tight in her lap. "Your wife left you," she whispered, "because you stopped to help me. She left because she decided I was a fool. Helping you was just the proof she needed. She was wrong." Kate's voice hardened suddenly, fierce and sharp. "She was wrong about you, Marcus. You are the opposite of a fool. You are one of the most decent human beings I have ever met in my life." Marcus shrugged. "Decency does not pay rent, no, but it should count for something. And today it is going to." Kate wiped her eyes and straightened in her chair, and Marcus watched the transformation happen in real time. The tears stopped. The trembling stopped. The woman sitting across from him was no longer a guilt-stricken stranger. She was someone else entirely. Someone whose presence filled the room like a change in weather. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. She slid it across the table. Marcus looked down at it. Catherine Harrington, Chief Executive Officer, Harrington Energy Partners. He looked up at her. She met his gaze without flinching. Harrington Energy is a $3.2 billion company, she said. We operate in 12 states, renewable energy, urban infrastructure, smart grid technology. The morning you pulled me out of that elevator, I was on my way to close the Morrison deal, a partnership that would expand our operations into 6 new markets. A deal worth over $400 million. She paused. Let that number sit in the air. If I had missed that meeting, if I had been trapped in that elevator for another hour, which is exactly how long it took the fire department to respond after someone else finally reported the problem, I would have lost everything. The deal, the partnership, possibly the company itself. Marcus stared at the business card. The letters seemed to sharpen and blur and sharpen again, like his eyes could not decide whether to believe what they were reading. You saved my company that morning. Marcus, you saved my career, my employees, everything I have spent 15 years building. And you did it without knowing a single one of those things. You did it because a stranger was terrified and you were the kind of man who could not walk away. I did not know, Marcus said quietly. I know you did not know. That is what makes it extraordinary. Kate leaned forward. Marcus, I have been looking for you for months. I hired someone to try to find you, but all I had was a first name and a description of a black man in a dress shirt who fixed an elevator and disappeared. I had no idea you were in this building until tonight. She took a breath and steadied her voice. I owe you a debt I can never fully repay, but I can start. David Calloway stepped forward. Marcus, I am the Chief Technology Officer of Harrington Energy. I oversee our entire engineering division. He pulled a folder from his portfolio and set it on the break room table. We have an opening for a senior infrastructure systems engineer. The position oversees the design and implementation of smart grid systems across our northeastern operations. It requires deep technical knowledge, creative problem-solving ability, and the kind of character that holds steady under pressure. He opened the folder. Inside were pages of engineering problems, thermodynamic calculations, circuit design, load analysis, system optimization. This is not charity, Kate said, and her voice was iron now. This is not pity. This is not a handout. This is a fair shot. A real assessment of your real abilities. You complete this, and if your work is as strong as I believe it is, the job is yours on merit. You will have earned every inch of it. Marcus looked at the folder. He looked at Kate. He looked at the break room with its stained ceiling tiles and its flickering lights and the mop bucket he had left by the door. Why? He asked. Why go to all this trouble? Because you went to all the trouble of stopping for me, Kate said. Because in a city full of people you were the only one who heard me screaming and decided it mattered enough to do something about it. Because kindness should not destroy a person's life, Marcus, it should build one. And because you are qualified, you are more than qualified. All I am doing is opening a door that should never have been slammed in your face. Marcus held the folder. It weighed almost nothing, a few sheets of paper, a few problems to solve, but it felt heavier than anything he had ever carried, because it was full of something he had not held in a very long time. Hope. Okay, he said. I will do it. The technical assessment took Marcus 4 hours. He sat in a quiet conference room on the 32nd floor of Harrington Energy's headquarters, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Delaware River, and he worked through every problem like a man who had been starving and was finally allowed to eat. At first his mind was sluggish, rusty. 5 months of night shifts and floor wax and emptying other people's garbage had dulled the sharp edge of his engineering brain. The formulas felt unfamiliar, like trying to speak a language he had not used in years. But gradually, like a muscle remembering its purpose, like fingers finding their way across piano keys they had not touched in too long, the knowledge came flooding back. Load calculations, thermal dynamics, power distribution modeling, smart grid architecture, system failure analysis. These were the things he had been born to understand, the things that had made him exceptional. The things that 8 months of rejection and 5 months of mopping floors had not been able to erase, because they were not just knowledge, they were him. When he finished, he brought the completed assessment to David Calloway's office. David reviewed it for 20 minutes in silence. Then he looked up, and he was smiling. "When can you start?" Marcus stared at him. "I passed." "You did not just pass, Marcus. You outscored every candidate we have ever assessed, engineers from MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Stanford. Your solutions are not just technically correct, they are elegant, innovative, the kind of work that tells me you do not just understand systems, you see them in a way most people never will." David stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to Harrington Energy, Mr. Williams." Monday morning, 8 o'clock sharp. Marcus shook his hand and felt something he had not felt in over a year. Not hope exactly. Something bigger than hope. Something steadier. The deep quiet knowledge that he had earned this. Not through luck. Not through pity. Through his own mind and his own hands and his own unbroken spirit. The company provided a temporary apartment near headquarters. A vehicle. An employee badge with his name and title. A salary that made his eyes water when he read the number. But more than any of those things, more than the apartment or the car or the money, they gave him back his dignity. Marcus threw himself into the work with the intensity of a man who understood in his bones what it meant to lose everything and get a second chance. He redesigned the power distribution model for Harrington's entire northeastern grid, saving the company an estimated $14 million in the first quarter alone. He developed a predictive monitoring system that could identify equipment failures 72 hours before they happened. He mentored younger engineers with a patience and generosity that earned him a reputation throughout the company. Within 3 months he was promoted to Director of Infrastructure Systems. Within 6 months Kate Harrington brought him into the executive team. "We are expanding into renewable energy," she told him one afternoon, sitting across from his desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Wind farms, solar installations, the full picture. David and I want you to lead the technical side of the entire operation." "That is enormous," Marcus said. "That is why we need someone extraordinary. Someone who thinks differently. Someone who does not break when things get impossible." She smiled. "Someone like you. I would be honored," Marcus said. He never forgot where he had been. He kept in touch with Harold, who came to visit his new office once, looked around at the view and the furniture and Marcus's name on the door and said, "Not bad for a janitor. Thompson." Marcus laughed so hard his assistant knocked on the door to make sure everything was all right. He paid for Darnell's next 2 semesters of community college and wrote him a note that said, "You told me I would bounce back. You were right. Now it is your turn." He called Rosa every Sunday evening because Marcus understood what it felt like to be invisible, and he never wanted anyone who had shown him kindness in the dark to feel forgotten in the light. And then 7 months after he started at Harrington Energy, the receptionist in the lobby called up to his office on a Tuesday evening. "Mr. Williams, there is someone here to see you. She says she is your ex-wife." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the Philadelphia skyline, all steel and glass and autumn light, and he took a slow breath. "Send her up." Diane stepped off the elevator looking like the woman Marcus had married. Her hair was done. Her clothes were new. She wore makeup and perfume, and that particular expression Marcus remembered from the night they met at the Keystone Gala years ago, the look of a woman who saw something she wanted and was already calculating how to get it. "Marcus." She breathed his name like a prayer. "I saw your picture on the company website, Director of Infrastructure Systems at Harrington Energy. I had to come see for myself." "It is real," Marcus said. They stood in the hallway outside his office, and the distance between them was not measured in feet. It was measured in everything that had happened since the last time they stood this close. Diane's eyes moved over him. The tailored suit. The polished shoes. The confidence in his posture that was not an act, not a performance, but the natural result of a man who had walked through fire and come out the other side still standing. She was seeing the man she left. The man she told herself did not exist anymore. The man she called a fool, and she wanted him back. Marcus could see it in her face as clearly as reading a sign on the highway. "I made a terrible mistake," Diane said. Tears formed in her eyes, perfectly timed, glistening in the hallway light. Leaving you. The things I said, all of it. I was scared and angry and I took it out on you and I have regretted it every single day. I know this is hard to hear, Diane. No, please. Let me finish. She stepped closer. I still love you. I never stopped. And I know deep down you still love me too. We had 8 years, Marcus. 8 years, that does not just disappear. Give me another chance. Please, let me make this right. We can have the life we always wanted now. Everything you lost, you got it all back. We can start over. Marcus looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. And he felt things he did not expect to feel. Sadness, yes. A deep aching sorrow for what they had been and what she had chosen to destroy. But not anger. And not to his own surprise, love. Not anymore. That flame had gone out somewhere between the signed divorce papers and the first night he pushed a mop down an empty hallway at 2 in the morning. You left when I was at the very bottom, he said quietly. Not with accusation, just with truth. You told me my kindness was stupidity. You told me my mother raised me to be poor. You said I was a soft-hearted fool who did not understand how the world worked. Diane flinched. I was wrong. I was terrible. I know that now. You were not wrong about what you believed, Diane. That is the thing. You were being honest. You genuinely thought that helping a terrified woman in an elevator was foolish. You genuinely believed that a good heart was a weakness, that kindness was something only people who could afford it should practice. And I do not blame you for believing that. A lot of people believe that. But I am not one of them, and I never will be. Marcus paused. He chose his next words with the care of an engineer measuring something that cannot afford to be wrong. My heart is the reason I am standing here today. Not in spite of what happened, Diane. Because of it, I stopped for a woman who was screaming for help and it cost me everything. My interview, my marriage, my home, my dignity. But that same act of kindness, that same choice you called stupid, is exactly what brought me to where I am right now. He looked at her steadily. If I had listened to you that morning, if I had kept running, if I had walked past Kate Harrington while she was trapped and terrified because I decided my interview was more important than another human being's suffering, I would still be out there somewhere, bitter, hard, broken, exactly the kind of man you wanted me to become, and I would have hated myself. Marcus, please, I am not that man. I was never going to be that man. And you deserve someone who matches what you need. I mean that, Diane. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. I am just not the one who can give it to you. Not anymore. Diane was crying now. Not the theatrical tears of a woman performing grief. Real tears, the kind that come when you finally understand fully and permanently what you have lost. You really are the man your mother raised, she whispered. Yes, Marcus said. I am. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out something he had been keeping since the day the divorce papers arrived. Her wedding ring, small and gold, worn smooth from years of wearing. He pressed it gently into her palm and closed her fingers around it. Take care of yourself, Diane. I mean that with my whole heart. She looked down at the ring. She looked up at Marcus one last time, and something shifted in her expression. Not anger, not pleading, something quieter. Something that might, if Marcus was being generous, have been the beginning of understanding. She turned and walked to the elevator. Marcus watched the doors close behind her. Then he stood in the hallway for a long moment, breathing slowly, feeling the sadness settle into his chest like rain soaking into soil. That chapter of his life was closed, truly and finally closed. His phone buzzed. A text from Kate. Board meeting tomorrow morning. Need your input on the Northeast expansion timeline. Breakfast first. My treat. Marcus smiled and typed back. Sounds perfect. See you at 8. He walked back into his office and stood at the window. The sun was going down over Philadelphia, painting the skyline in shades of gold and amber and deep, tired red. Somewhere down there in the streets and the subway tunnels and the old buildings with their cranky elevators, people were living their lives, carrying their burdens, fighting their battles, wondering if anyone saw them, wondering if anyone cared. Marcus thought about that morning. The side street, the glass doors, the sound of Kate's voice, raw with terror, echoing through an empty lobby. The choice he made in the space of a single heartbeat, a choice that cost him everything he had and ultimately gave him back more than he ever lost. He thought about Diane's words, "Your mother raised you to be poor." And he thought about his mother's words, the real ones, the ones that mattered, the ones he had carried with him through every dark night and every empty hallway and every moment when the world told him that his goodness was a flaw. "You got a good heart, baby. Do not ever let this world take that from you." She had been right. She had always been right, because a man who stops to help someone in need, even when it costs him everything he has, is never truly defeated. He might lose his job. He might lose his home. He might lose the person he thought he would love forever. He might find himself at the very bottom of the world, pushing a mop through an empty building at 2 in the morning, wondering if God remembers his name. But he will not stay there. Because the same heart that made him stop, the same decency that made him kneel by an elevator and say, "Breathe with me," that is the thing that lifts him back up. Every single time. Not on his schedule. Not when he expects it. But always. Always. Marcus turned from the window and sat down at his desk. He opened his laptop. He had work to do. Good work. Important work. The kind of work that would light up cities and power homes, and make people's lives a little bit better, a little bit brighter, one system at a time. He got started. Outside, the street lights of Philadelphia came on one by one, pushing back against the gathering dark, and somewhere in a break room on the 18th floor of Mercer Tower, Harold poured himself coffee from his old thermos, looked out at the city lights, and smiled to himself. "Told you, son," he said quietly. "Told you your break was coming." The world does not always reward good people on their schedule. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years, sometimes you have to walk through so much darkness that you forget what the light looks like, but it comes. It always comes, because kindness is not stupidity, kindness is not weakness, kindness is the bravest, hardest, most courageous thing a human being can choose to do in a world that keeps telling you to look out for yourself first. And the universe, in its own slow and mysterious way, never forgets the ones who choose it anyway. All you have to do is keep going, keep your heart open, keep being the person your mama raised you to be. The rest will take care of itself. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.